Everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Visual First, How Design-Driven Brands Can Outperform Competitors. We're starting in just a moment. While we wait for others to join, we'd love to know where you're tuning in from today and what industry you're in, so drop your location and sector in the chat. It's always great to see the diverse mix of marketers who join these sessions. Before we dive in, just a few housekeeping notes. We encourage you to submit questions anytime using the Q&A box. We'll tackle as many as possible at the end. You'll receive the webinar recording and recording via email, so no need to take frantic notes today. And with that, let's get started. Today, we're exploring how leading marketers are making design a strategic priority, not just something that happens at the end of a project. We'll also discuss how teams are shifting from being brand police to brand enablers, and what AI-powered workflows mean for your team's productivity and impact. Our speakers today bring us deep experience in crafting marketing and brand strategies that drive real business results. So let's meet them. Lubna, Scott, and Benny, could each of you introduce yourselves and share a bit about your background and expertise? Lubna?
Hi, I'm Lubna Uspa. I'm the Senior Director of Brand Management, Content, and Visual Design at Ricoh, which basically, for that really long title, means that I am our in-house creative director and I run our in-house team. We do all the marketing campaigns, trade shows, customer events, collateral, video, pretty much a whole 360 marketing campaigns.
Excellent. Scott?
Hey, everybody. I'm Scott Birchman. I'm the VP of Marketing and Creative Operations at Exos. We're a human performance company. We help people and organizations unlock their potential. So managing physical fitness centers virtually through our Exos coaching app, and developing leaders through performance workshops, training elite athletes. We combine coaching, science, and technology to get our members ready for the moments that matter to them. My focus here is just building systems that empower strategic storytelling. So high impact B2B campaigns, field ready B2C content, so teams can just move fast, stay aligned, drive results. My career, I've led creative teams across media and agency and enterprise, from MTV to in-house agencies, and now here at Exos.
Excellent. And Benny?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Benny and I look after solutions consulting at Canva across the Europe, Middle East and Africa region. And we're partnering with like large Fortune 500 enterprises. My background, similar to the other two, is in creative and brand design, and that lens very much shapes a lot of the work that we do here at Canva. Over the past few years, been really fortunate enough to work with some of the world's biggest brands and have seen firsthand how design and brand can completely shift the way that companies grow. So I'm excited to dig into that today.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for taking your time today. So we know humans are wired to process and recall visual stimuli better than other formats, but what does it actually mean to be a visual first brand? So Lubna, let's start with you. How do you distinguish between making things pretty and true design-led strategies?
Yeah, I always love that question because I think that is how people often perceive design, and particularly the role of art directors and designers is to make things look pretty. But it's a much deeper, more important practice that we do in order to make things impactful. So the first thing is that every brand needs to have a very strong design system that identifies who they are as a brand, that really differentiates them, that becomes a recognizable visual design language. When you think of a company like Apple, everything is always against white or against black. It's very simple. It's not cluttered. That's their aesthetic, right? So you need to find those elements that are going to distinguish you in the marketplace, and it really should come out of what the DNA of your company is, so that it cannot be replicated and that it's not trend driven or of the moment. Again, you know, it'll be interesting to hear what Scott says because MTV had such a strong brand. And I always say that if you hear the name of that company and you can see it, then you know you've succeeded in having a visual first design system.
That's a great point. I was seeing it in my head as you were saying that, so thank you. Scott, and then Benny, what's your take?
Yeah, it's like, you know, like pretty isn't the goal. And I think you kind of get that confusion with a lot of people. That's like design is just something that gets thrown in like towards the end. But you know, it's like the brands that make you feel something. It's not just about, you know, looking good. It's kind of remembering to take action. And I feel like the brands that dominate or can come through in the noise of everything that I know we all see every day, it's just it's embedded in strategic storytelling and architecture. Like every touch point, like design is just not a service layer. It's sort of form in strategy, right? It's not just the end of the project. It's something that the whole company kind of has to understand and buy into. Not always easy to do, but when you can really make it part of your culture, like that just shows up in the work that you do.
Yeah.
And also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
You go with it.
No, I was just going to say, as humans, we are wired for visual stimulus. We see things before we read things. And I think that's where it becomes really important to understand how to grab someone's attention. Is not going to be with just a clever tagline or a lot of, you know, I guess, you know, strategic copy points about what makes you different. You really have to look different. And once you look different, you catch people's attention because they haven't become numb to what they're looking at, and it stands out in a sea of so much sameness. And I think that that is something that becomes part of your brand value.
Yeah, I like the phrase sameness, and I think like the importance of like a brand identity, or those associations that are made with consistent visuals and messaging really can't be underestimated. I love the example of MTV, and that's a brand that's doing its best, right? Like it's there in the minds. We have all of these associations with 3 letters, and that's really impressive. I think also we sometimes simplify a brand to marketing and external facing touch points, but within large organizations, the people and the culture that's represented inside workforces also carry a brand. Canva is a really values-led organization, and that's a big part of our brand. So brands and visual identities are multifaceted, and the ability to communicate with internal stakeholders in a way that's visually compelling, signing things off, moving things forward, helps us make better decisions and investments. So brand and design-led approach is important in all touch points with a large organization.
It's interesting, I mean, because we often focus on the customer, right? The end consumer who's looking at your brand. But Ricoh in just North America has a 30,000 employee workforce. So we are also communicating to our internal audiences as well. And when I led the visual rebrand, it excited so many people, and I was getting so many emails from people throughout the organization, totally cross-functionally outside of marketing, saying, I'm so excited to be working at a company with such a modern, vibrant, cool, even, you know, people would say that, a cool look. And because, again, everyone within your company is a brand ambassador, and I really believe that very firmly, not only when they're customer facing, but also within their own communities and how people perceive your brand, your company, your products. And it's something that can really excite and employees and get them even more engaged and more invested in the business.
I think these are all, yeah, go ahead.
Same thing as we went through a brand refresh about 4 years ago. It was the same thing. It's like you have to have something that gets your internal employees excited, because to Lubna's point, like they are your brand ambassadors. Like you want them to be sharing your content. You want them to be talking, about you with power and emotion. And if you're going to go down that road of a refresh or a rebrand or a campaign, don't forget to ask those internal people for some of their input. It's obviously about customers and it's about acquisition and growth and all of those things, but getting the pulse of how your teams feel about what you're doing is a huge part of that brand also. So don't forget about the people inside your walls.
I really love that perspective. Thank you both for bringing that in. So now that we've established that visual first brands do have a clear advantage, but between knowing what to do and actually executing it, that's where most marketing teams hit some walls. What tends to get in the way of implementing or scaling a design-led strategy? Scott, what makes this harder than it should be?
I think like most of us, creatives really don't like task switching, and creatives will take as much time as you give them. However, you also need to give them the space to be creative. And that could happen for people at multiple times of the day. So, part of what, we've tried to do even internally as a culture at Exos is, how do we enable flow states for all of our employees, not just our creative team, but, for creatives, like how do we give them the time to make sure that they have the space to do the work that they need to do. So it's not always the case in every organization, but trying to limit multiple priorities and helping, them sort of understand the work that has to get done, where it ties to in the business, and making sure they have the time to do those things and taking away that friction. Training them on notifications. How do you turn those things off in Slack? Like, how do you help them understand how to give themselves the most white space as possible is super important. If you can give them that, you're setting yourself up for success as best as you can. I know it's not always possible, but really trying to focus on making sure your operation of those creative teams, how they get their work, how they're briefed on their work, and the space to do the work is going to get you, the best output from them.
Yeah, I love that you are talking about space, because I sometimes periodically look at my team's schedule to make sure they don't have too many meetings. Because as you were saying, that moving from one task to the other, there's such a huge distraction that I really am very protective of their time, and that they're not going to meetings that aren't specifically helping them move the work forward. So, sometimes I will take on that burden to sit through some of those meetings that I don't feel are particularly useful for them, but I need to be in at a 30,000 foot view. So I try to keep their attention very directed to just what they're focusing on, because creatives get very distracted and non-creatives do as well. But I find that if I don't distract them with extraneous information that is not needed to get that actual campaign done, or that event designed, or that piece of collateral finished. And then we always have a status meeting at the beginning of the week, so that I can, on Monday mornings, so I can brief them on what's just going on in general within marketing, what's going on in general throughout the company, and then allow them to just be focused the rest of the week.
And I'm sure your team appreciates that too.
They do. And another thing we just started doing in terms of visual first is that I gave my team back 4 hours a month to just go off and do whatever they want. So whether that's to do a webinar, to go to an exhibit at a museum, to read a book that is fascinating them about, and it does not, and in fact, I encourage them for it not to be marketing related and to not even be within their function. And then every other month we get back together and everyone shares what was currently inspiring them. And it's been really fun, especially since my team is mostly remote, because you don't have that sidebar of, oh, I just saw this cool movie. Oh, look at this cool comic book. Oh, I just saw this great thing at the Met, because we're all in different cities too. So I think that's really important. And I actually told my own boss that I did this. I said, we're always talking about development at Ricoh and how to develop your teams and how to stretch your teams. And I felt for creatives, that is how we stretch. That's how we stay with a visual first strategy, right? Is that you've got to bring in all that input and all that inspiration, not just staring at your computer all day in InDesign or Photoshop. And especially also too, when you're working within a really well-defined design system, it can start to feel, I don't want to say boring, but constricting, right?
Right. Yeah. I love those points. Thank you. And I really do want to talk about this protecting creative time concept that we're discussing. Benny, you're having those conversations with marketing teams every day. So what are the biggest frustrations they're bringing to you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the points around looking after our creative resource. They're one of the most precious resources in marketing. And often when we are having conversations with marketing teams, it's about silos and fragmented workflows. Some of the common challenges that marketing are trying to solve. The goal being trying to find greater efficiencies and speed. But as mentioned, like there's a tension there between protecting our resources and looking after our creative teams. So finding that balance of driving efficiency and speed whilst still protecting and leveraging our brand systems is important. Often marketing teams are juggling lots of tools. So designers are probably somewhat fortunate that they have their bread and butter tools that they're working in on a day-to-day basis. But when we take a step back and we look at the broader marketing tech stack, there's a lot of different tools serving different purposes. And at Canva, we're trying to help unify those functions, get people on the same page, often literally, with brand assets and a centralized platform that makes it accessible for all stakeholders beyond just the design team to contribute and play a role, whether that's an initial whiteboard where a campaign idea was birthed all the way through to those final deliverables and analytics.
Excellent. Thank you. And Lubna, I know you talked about protecting your team, not having them do too many meetings and giving them that time to be creative in their own lives. So what would be some other barriers that you're seeing to building a strong visual first brand strategy?
I think a big part of it isn't just, of course, training your team and teaching them how to expand while maintaining the standards, but also making sure your stakeholders understand, because there's a lot of, we live it and breathe it and see it all day long, but our customers do not. And that's a thing that I everywhere I've ever worked that I've always stressed, which is consistency. There's three things I always say: clear, clever, and consistent. And clarity is always the first thing, right? If you're not clear, it doesn't matter how clever you are, but you have to maintain consistency. And the strongest brands are consistent. It's like a new CMO comes in, they want to do a refresh. A new creative director comes in, they want to put their stamp on the work. And sometimes, obviously, that is very well needed. In fact, that was my role when I came into Ricoh. And it's always an incredible opportunity to do that. But I think if you don't stay consistent with your brand, your whole strategy falls apart. You become fragmented in the work in the marketplace. And so it's important to stay committed to it, even though you might feel that you're getting bored of it. You know what? If your customer is bored of it, wow, what an amazing problem to have, that you are that recognized and that remembered, that people are thinking, oh, when are they going to do something new? That's always Nike's challenge. That's always Apple's challenge. That's always Target's challenge. That's actually the challenge of a successful brand. But when you're still trying to build that recognition in the marketplace, I really feel that consistency is really key, and you have to stay disciplined and not distracted with the new thing.
I'm glad that you brought up consistency, because I do want to ask, as we're seeing this shift in marketing stance from brand police to brand enablers, how can marketers navigate the tension between ensuring brand consistency that you're talking about and still empowering others in the organization to produce on-brand assets?
For me, having a really clear visual design guide is really important, and also having assets available that people can plug and play with. So while I don't like to encourage random acts of marketing throughout the organization, I do also want people to feel empowered to do things on their own. So we have hundreds of sales reps. There's no possible way that my team can do every sales presentation. So we have several within our design system, PowerPoint templates for them to use. We have a brand portal for brand approved visuals that people can use, so they're not grabbing stuff from Google and, that are tacky or weird or, inappropriate or just not legal to be using. And then we also have just a lot of what we call kind of, I don't want to say generic, but because we have so many different lines of business, that we have these more broad brand assets that can be used for small meetings and pop-ups, whether they're banners, they're in a portal so they can get them printed locally, leave behinds that they can print locally. So we really try to kind of almost have a brand store of materials that any, salesperson can access and get their hands on, and not trying to do, doing it themselves, but that can also be customized as needed.
I really like that. Scott, how do you manage that balance at Exos?
Yeah, it's a hard one. We we have in our client sites across the country, so we work inside of Fortune 100 brands, and we have our Exos brand, we have our Exos story, but not every client allows us to be brand forward. We turned on Canva for Enterprise 3 years ago. Prior to that, everyone was designing stuff in Google Slides, the Lumina, the random acts of marketing. It was just like, bless their hearts, like our coaches in the field, they have to do a lot. They have to take care of the facilities. They have to, manage members. They have to make sure people come in the doors. Now we have to make sure people download the app. They have to stay engaged and do all of those things. So what we kind of decided, it's like, it's not about kind of lowering the bar of design for people. It's kind of like raising the floor a little bit. So how can we use templates? At least we know that from a visual standpoint, these, an 8.5 by 11 flyer, right? That someone's either going to send in an email or print out and stick on a wall. At least we know it's laid out the right way. The architecture is right. So whether or not they can keep our logo on there or put the client's logo next to it, we've given them all of the options to play with. It is beyond a full-time job to police this at scale. It really is. So you just have to be very strategic about the moments where, if you're a small marketing and creative team or a large one, where is your attention most needed? We focus on sales. We focus on our website. We focus on our social content. We have external partners that we use for a lot of our production design, but where you're really looking to, democratize creative at scale, you have to have honest conversations about where these things are showing up and how much you have to put your fingerprint on them, and be willing to let things go, because it will never be perfect, and creative can be a commodity to some degree. It just depends on the scale that you're looking at. But having, whether it's Canva or anything else, just sort of set templates, do the road shows, make sure people understand how to use them. We have open office hours. We answer questions. Like, the more you can train the trainers who have to go then implement these things, the better. Turning it on and letting it go, it's not going to work, but you have to start with some level of training and understanding about back to the brand, why this is important, why we do this. Do the best you can. We're here if you need help, and have some sort of return system that says, I need a new template. Like, we have, digital displays that show up in locker rooms or on the gym floor, new ways to promote, throughout our app experience. We have, iterable we use as for push notifications. It's like there's new forms and formats showing up every single time. So you also have to make sure that field loophole that can come back to the mothership to be like, we have this new thing that we have to figure out. Cool. Like, make sure that open line of dialogue is there. Because if it's not, you're going to have people going to figure it out on their own. And you're going to say, who the heck made that? And where did that come from? Like, we shouldn't be doing that. So you just have to make sure that line of communication is open, no matter how far your brand is reaching into the field.
Great points. Thank you. And Benny, just based on what Lubna and Scott have been sharing, does this reflect what you've observed in your work with enterprise brands?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is like the age-old challenge of people across an organization having their best attempt at creating content. And it's not something that's going away. If anything, I think the demand and need for everyone across an organization to leverage a brand system is increasingly important and relevant. And I like some of the terms that were mentioned and the other answers there around rogue content or random acts of marketing. And it's just not feasible for a small, even a large creative team to shoulder the responsibility of visual communication for an entire organization alone, especially now with things like social platforms that just constantly need to be fed with more new content. So the challenge is, how do we make those random acts of marketing work for us and not against our marketing goals? We've found at Canva and with our customers, the answer is automating the repetitive tasks, supporting scaling the brand systems to larger workforces, and empowering others to create their own brand compliant content. So striking that balance of the teams responsible for brand systems being in control and having visibility, but able to outsource and unlock new brand gatekeepers. Gatekeepers is probably not the right word. Brand advocates across the organization that can use your systems. Generally, there's like this old workflow where content and design requests are always coming into a design team. They create those assets and then they go back and forth with stakeholders. But what we're now able to do is unlock the self-serve workflow, flip that funnel on its head, and start to proactively surface templates that are accessible for everyone. That's something that's kind of come up from these other answers, but doing it in a way that's meaningful and dynamic and with the guardrails that we want to set. So rather than feeding like an old inward funnel, we've now unlocked self-serve workflow. Other departments love it because they're no longer dependent on that limited design resource or the capacity of the design team. And then the designers love it because that's not the work they want to be doing anyway. We want to give them the high value strategic work, and we're freeing them up from those repetitive tasks as well.
That's a really great point. And thinking about the brands that you helped implement those systems, what kind of measurable impact have they reported?
Yeah, impact, I think, is such a critical one. A case study that comes to mind is a large insurance company came to Canva looking to actually save cost and time. And they were also struggling to do exactly what we said, scaling content production across various markets. So we worked with them. We implemented a combination of workflows and some AI-powered features within Canva, like translation at scale, bulk creation of content, and even magic resizing of of design, and it really transformed how they were able to deliver content across those different markets. And when it comes to measuring that, we looked at things like their turnaround time, so the localized campaigns. We were able to shrink that by about 70%, but also boost the production output, so about 15x of increased output, but with less time associated with it. Translations is another big one where that workflow was laborious and time consuming, and we took it from around a 2-week turnaround to localize content down to within the hour. And then there's like the number, the revenue figure or the money attached to that as well. And in this particular case, it was in the millions. We sat around, we worked out there was about $2 million USD in savings across multiple facets within the first year. And these are quite common actually across Canva. When we deploy Canva into a large organization at scale, everyone has different goals, but we'll work with the customers to identify what those goals are, unlock those workflows that support it, and then actually track and measure that over a few months as well.
Incredible numbers. Thank you so much. So next, I'd like us to focus on key considerations marketers should prioritize when building or refining a design-led strategy. Lumna, what guidance can you share with our viewers?
I've had the pleasure of getting to do a lot of refreshes and rebrands, but that is not always the case. I mean, often you're inheriting a design system or inheriting an existing campaign. And hopefully that's a good one. And that's why you're there to continue that on. But I always think, brands are not tombstones, right? If you are a tombstone, then you're dead. That they are living, breathing entities, and they can grow up to be a dynamic, awesome human being, or they can be a big mess that are not effective. So I think there's always ways to push existing design systems, whether that's in how you refresh the photography or the illustration, right? I always say to my team, the picture is the biggest part that's on the page. So if you choose a bad photograph, it's going to be a bad design. It doesn't matter what the layout looks like or what the color palette is. So I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can evolve one. You can refresh the color palette. You can maybe it's funny because when Google changed their typeface from whatever it was to whatever it was, I think it was a serif to a sans serif, and everyone freaked out. But, your eye gets so used to seeing something that even a small change becomes a big deal. They recently, and it was actually an old colleague of mine who did the new I Love New York logo that got so much backlash. And he turned it into a dimensional heart from being a flat heart. And again, people really freaked out. So it's interesting to see how much attachment people can have to a design system, and how a very small change can make a huge impact, especially for a deeply rooted legacy brand like Coca-Cola, right? I'm sure the Coca-Cola Red I've never worked on Coke, but I'm sure it's very specific, and I'm sure they spend a lot of time making sure it's consistent from what is printed on a garment to what's printed on a billboard to what's on their actual packaging. So if they were to tweak that color, it would have a big impact. If they were I worked on a rebrand for Renaissance Hotels, and we refined the cartouche, which was that, the flourish that you see with calligraphy. And it had a huge impact, just refining that, just cleaning up those lines. So I think that those are some ways that you can have a big impact making small changes. But more importantly is you really start with an audit. right? Because if you look at someone like UPS or FedEx, when they rebrand, that means all of those cars, all of those trucks, all of that packaging. I mean, it is a huge, huge undertaking. And I think that's actually one of the challenges in doing a refresh. It probably took 2 years at Ricoh to completely have everything in the new design system. And there are still things that will peek out, an old page on the website, or an old presentation that people are cutting and pasting from, and it's just, I always feel that if you can get to 80%, you've won, because I do have friends at those those big sexy B2C brands, and they have the same challenges. No one is doing it 100% of the time. It's not possible. But what is interesting, to Benny's point, that is the mundane task of managing a brand, is maintaining that consistency. And if you can automate it in some way, that is, saves hours and hours of time, especially if you're just flipping things that are already existing. But again, also with the design system, you need to think about how it works amongst different touch points. Like, how does it show up in video? How does it show up as a PowerPoint presentation? How does it show up in an event? Because each of those channels have their own challenges.
Yeah, good points. Scott, what guidance would you add for marketers looking to refine their design systems?
Yeah, Lumina is spot on. I think that audit first is really important, because there's cost involved in all of that, right? So you have to make sure what you're willing to commit to. We did a rebrand versus a refresh, right? So like in 2021, we tore everything down and built it back up. So the most important thing at the outset, who are the cooks in the kitchen that need to be involved from the beginning, and really understanding the people process of that whole thing. Whether or not you have a CEO who wants to be involved, whether you have a sales leader who wants to be involved, like it's a really tricky game that you have to play to understand it. But the last thing you want to do is spend a lot of money or time on an internal agency or an external agency, go through all these ideas, present it, and everyone be like, what? Why did you do that? You didn't ask us. I didn't give your input. And of course, someone's going to come in at the 11th hour and throw it all out anyway, because that's just how these things work. But I think that the people process, don't forget that exists. Find inspiration, ask the questions. What do you like? This is super simple, right? Like, give us examples of brands that you like, what you see, what they've done. Throw all those things up on a mood board. Like, just let people see it. And the more you can bring those decision stakeholders along for the ride, the lower the risk of surprises later on. And it's not always easy to do that, but like, you have to really figure that out first. And whether it's you by yourself, if you have a good, my team is our operations. So whether it's producers or project managers, whoever, find a person who can really be the quarterback to really drive the project operation, not just the creative operation. And that creative leader and that project leader are so important to understand each other and work together, because again, let your creative lead be creative. Let your project person run the thing, schedule the meetings, set up the Figma boards, set up the Canva boards, make sure everyone's involved in that and documenting that process, and give yourself the checks and balances of that decision process. So when someone comes in and says, I didn't like that, you're like, over here, you said you did, like, what happened? And you may not have a choice in that, but that people process and the operation process is so important in any refresh or rebrand. And don't let your creative leads sit on an island doing that themselves, because it's really important to have that second set of eyes to kind of pull that through. Really
great advice. Benny, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I love the way that the brand system's been sort of talked about here, and I always like to think of the system component of design and brand across a large organization being like a heartbeat, and it's very much the heartbeat of a marketing organization. But I think when the heartbeat can live in the tools and live in the day-to-day work rather than it needing to always be by human intervention, that's when brands really start to soar. We're freeing up those creative minds to evolve and push and progress the brand, but the day-to-day systems are locked in and accessible for everyone. And that's something that we'll do with the team when we bring them onto Canva, and we'll set up their accounts. The Canva account then becomes the heartbeat where the brand systems live, those templates, the creative workflows, the assets all live. We kind of talked about it earlier about freeing up creative teams, and I love where the other two are kind of where their heads are at. It's like this high value strategic creative work, but to do that and enable that, we need to like build scalable and repetitive workflows that actually unlock the capacity to do that, and that's one of the ways that we see Canva being used as well.
And speaking of automation and workflows, we can't have a marketing conversation in 2025 without talking about AI. So Lubna, what AI applications are you seeing, and where do you see opportunities for marketers?
I mean, I'm very excited on AI. I'm leaning in big time into AI. The way that we've been using it is several ways. I mean, we've just really been experimenting and playing with it. So one of the things that I just did was I needed to put together a comp for this idea I had for a trade show exhibition design. But we work with an exhibition design firm. But before I could sell it in my concept to my CEO and my VP, I needed to make, I needed to visualize it, because I wasn't going to just say, oh, it's going to be this bamboo forest and these animals are going to be coming out of the presses. And they would have just looked at me like I was completely crazy. So I put it into Dolly. I gave it a bunch of prompts, and I could not believe the output. I mean, that is something that would have taken hours and hours and hours in Photoshop to do. And it visualized my concept in a couple of minutes. And then I was able to show it to them, and she was like, I love this idea. And then I could brief my exhibition design team in the correct way with an idea that was already bought in. So we didn't waste thousands of dollars on revisions and waste weeks of time. So to me, you know, AI is a great way to visualize your concepts. It's a great way to do iterations on existing headlines. I think it's a brainstorming partner. So everyone from my writers to my designers to my motion graphics artists have been able to use it. We've been using it for translations, and then have it checked by one of our in-house translators, subtitling, voiceovers in translation. What are some other things that we've been playing around with? So we're visualizing concepts. We're doing iterations on existing copy. We're taking 28-page ebooks, having them summarized, which would have taken a writer so much time to do and would have been such a waste of their time. So the high value work, which is coming up with new ideas, is where I want my team spending most of their time. And then these like things that a smart intern could do is what I want AI to do, because then we can train our smart intern to do those more higher value assets. So everything from writing to visualization to summarizing, and then researching with citations, which my brand strategist uses it for. We love it. We're loving it.
Perfect. Scott, do you agree?
Yeah, I would say first, I don't know how you guys feel. Like everything's moving so fast. I feel inundated, and I feel like we're not doing enough. Like it feels like so much. And I feel like the best thing that we kind of all can do for our teams is just settle down. It's okay. Help train and understand. It's like everything else. And that's kind of what we went through, where at first, this is back probably a year and a half ago, I was, I said to my CMO, I'm like, I'm gonna push this on everybody. And like, let's figure out how to train people, get them comfortable. Because if you just say, we have ChatGPT, go use it. It's like, okay, I have no idea. Like, same thing when you roll out a Canva or any other platform, you have to train people to understand it. Live training to talk to people through, like, our strategy team. Here's how you can take 17 documents that we have to analyze, go into Notebook LM, synthesize it, get some information together, turn it into a podcast and go for a walk and go listen, right? Like, so it's just giving people those real world examples. Our creative team specifically, we wanted to figure out, all right, how can you use Midjourney? How can we use ChatGPT? How can you use ChatGPT to understand how to properly prompt something in Midjourney, using the tools to help each other? So instead of giving them a brand focused assignment, our creative director, Adrian, is like the best idea possible. He gave everyone this sort of test or thing to do. Sorry, I can't remember the word. Anyway, it was our marketing leadership team. How do we turn each of them into a Muppet? So that task was to go into Figma, put in their prompts, show the outputs, kind of go down, give them something fun to do that isn't related to the job, to just test and learn their skills in prompting. So those little sort of side projects are a real good way where you can not only just train people, but get them to go explore and learn. So now when we have a campaign where for us, we have to make this tie between our heritage in professional and elite sports training to the corporate employee who sits inside of a boardroom, we could have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, recording and taking photography of different plates and different boardrooms and actors and models and everything else. So we said, all right, well, how do we kind of bring together this idea of whether it's a football player or a soccer player or a baseball player inside of a boardroom? Like, let's ideate and see what we can come up with. We actually ended up using those ideas as our ads for that campaign. So it's really like getting folks hands-on exploration, really feeling comfortable in how to use it, and assign someone on your team partially as much as you can to just once a month hold a training, hold some office hours, like bring people through that process together. Because when you're trying to figure out AI on your own, like it's overwhelming. Like, it's really hard right now. So I think it's just like knowing that you're in a group of folks who can do this together, whether it's helping sales understand things, or it's helping your creative team understand and how to get those folks to work together. Pick a tool and just focus there until you get comfortable before you worry about, I got to try this in 7 different places. That was kind of our best kind of mode to get where we are today.
Really great point. Benny, anything you would add on the topic of AI?
Yeah, I think when it comes to AI and the conversations we're having with our customers, it kind of falls into 3 buckets. It's creativity, which is some of the examples that have been shared, making that more accessible, making that faster, and kind of bridging the gap between ideation and production. Efficiencies in general, how can we transform our content and move faster from briefing all the way through to production. But then also connectivity is another big thing that now with large organizations and even small organizations setting up their own LLMs or leveraging LLMs, connecting that in a meaningful way to the other platforms that are being used makes everything more connected and as a byproduct, more efficiency as well. We actually ran a report recently where we interviewed marketing and creative leaders across the globe to try and gather their insights around AI trends, what their attitudes were and what their use cases were towards it. And 82% of those respondents told us that AI frees them up to do more exciting work. Nearly as many said that the AI tools are actually enhancing their creativity. The prior examples are probably testament to that. But then 94% said that they're already committing budget like a dedicated budget and spend towards AI tools as well. And where I see the most exciting use cases is when marketers are challenging like the old ways of thinking about workflows and breaking down those silos to work more collaboratively around content creation. And these tools really unlock what can happen with a brand and a design system across an organization, freeing up that creative team to not just be brand gatekeepers any longer.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have just about 10 minutes left together and one more topic to cover before we move into some audience questions, which is how marketers can measure the impact of visual first campaigns. Lumna, what's your approach to performance metrics?
We always start with what are the KPIs and ROI at the very beginning of every campaign, and what business unit and what business objective is it serving. It's literally baked into our brief. What business unit, how does that relate to their KPI, and how are we going to measure the return on this investment? And then we have a fabulous data analytics team that then analyzes the performance of that campaign if it's a digital campaign. For our live events, we have different KPIs for whether it's leads, qualified leads, sales qualified leads, how that's impacted pipeline, how we've touched pipeline. And then we try to do A/B testing if it's a digital campaign, particularly on what the CTAs are. And then we try to take all of those learnings and then optimize them. But I would say always start with your KPIs and ROI at the beginning of anything that is paid. We're a little more, we measure all of our organic traffic as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a paid campaign, because a person is sitting down and doing that work, and that's an investment. So I always want to make sure that everyone on my team, that everyone outside of my team sees the value my team is creating, because ultimately that's how you help your team grow and develop and keep their jobs.
Absolutely agree. Scott, Benny, would either of you add anything regarding metrics?
Yeah, I think there's some obvious ones like time saving, spend save, increased velocity and content production. But one thing I think is sometimes overlooked when we're thinking about our brand health or the sentiment, going back to some of the points raised earlier, is having a look at social media. It's a community platform now, and it's a great testing tool. A lot of brands live on social platforms where there's a lot of discussion happening around every piece of content. The I Heart New York is a great example of that. And on TikTok specifically, it's very much equal parts post and commentary. And for us internally at Canva, that's been a great learning tool where our social media managers are measuring various things around the performance and health of our brand, the virality of our content, the views, the sentiment, the engagement, and then feeding that in as a live data source to help us inform our decisions.
Scott, did you want to say anything there?
Yeah, I was going to say, also business outcomes, right, is why we're in our jobs, of course, but don't forget the people outcomes of that. So at the end of your projects, a big campaign, ask the questions about how we did. We've had very good, tense conversations about our operation. We could have the best campaign ever that drove a lot of business, but if we all hate each other at the end of it, we actually failed. So how your people feel about how those outcomes are, about how strategy was communicated, how the project did from a communication standpoint, did the creative team deliver on the strategic brief? Like, how do we operate better? Don't forget about that part of it, because everyone could love the campaign, but everyone bails on the company because they don't like working with each other. Like, as a leader, you've actually failed there, regardless of how the business did. Now you got to restaff. Now you got to spend more time. Now you got to spend money there. So don't forget the people involved in making these things happen too.
Really great point. Thank you so much. We have just a few minutes left, so I do want to jump over to some audience questions. So thank you so much for a great discussion. Our first question here says, it looks to me like everyone is in circles and grabbing what works and sticks when it comes to LLM and AI. Are there directive learning tracks that are proven models? Would anyone like to take this?
I can jump in. I think one of the easiest things I think you can do is, one of the leaders that I listen to, it's just like every job is a series of tasks, and taking that first step to outline what those tasks are and how long each of those tasks take, and can this be optimized, and if it can, how much would it cost, or how much time, or what's the right platform? Doesn't necessarily have to be AI, but any level of automation could work. Is just start simple, like break it down first, understand the job that actually happens, and then whether it's you or someone else in your organization, on your product team, your tech team, whomever, can help you figure out, like, all right, I can eliminate 3 hours a month by taking these 3 steps and smushing them into one. That's the first place to start. And if you have a better understanding of the actual tasks of what you're trying to solve, then it'll be much easier to train people on how to fix it using the system that you have. Just don't throw the system at the problem. Understand the problem really well before you go and throw a tool at it.
Excellent. Thank you. Our next question asks, what visual trends do you find exciting or promising right now? Who'd like to lead that?
I think we're now in an era where a brand system can be hyper-personalized. And I think that's enabled now with the AI tools that we have at our disposal, where we don't have to push the same messaging to broader audiences. We can really understand who we're aiming to connect with and target messaging and ideas that resonate with them. And that's a challenge for brand teams and design teams to overcome, but an awesome opportunity where the resonance of what we are trying to communicate can be much, much richer and much more engaging. And I think that's forcing brand teams to really think about the brand systems in a way that can support more adaptation and more flexibility, but still maintaining that sort of consistency and those associations that we spoke about before.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question, Benny, this is likely for you. Does Canva allow for personalized content creation at scale?
Yeah, I mean, kind of touched on it with that previous answer, but yes, absolutely. I think there's a suite of tools that a lot of enterprise customers are coming to Canva for, being able to translate on platform, resize, using our writing tool Magic Write, where we can write and have Canva filter through our brand tone of voice. All of these tools not only enable that hyper-personalization, but also that democratization of who can leverage the brand systems as well.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we can squeeze in one more question here. Lubna, you mentioned that strong design systems are well-defined, but still broad and flexible. Could you quickly elaborate on that?
I've worked with design systems in the past that I inherited where it's like, there's an orange band on the top, then there's the picture, then you put the logo here in the corner. And I think that type of templated, rigid design systems fail very quickly and become really boring very quickly. I think you need to figure out what key elements are. A color palette that in combination creates a lot of interesting combinations, right? You've got your brights, you got your darks, and then how they play together. So you really need to think of how much flexibility and variety 6 colors can give you. You need to pick a font that has many weights, not just one weight. That how it looks in thin, how it looks in medium, how it looks in bold, for me, italics should only be used for a title, but also how it looks in italic. You need how it looks in all caps versus all lowercase. if how it looks in the letters of the name of your company, because we had one that we fell in love with, but the way that the I was so weird, we couldn't use it. The style of your photography, how you show people versus how you show still life, how you include illustration, how you include infographics. You should have all of those things accounted for. I could go on all day about this.
We'd have a whole nother webinar about that one. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. We are at the end of our time together. Before we sign off, we invite you to access Canva's State of Marketing and AI report, which covers research findings about how your peers are using AI and what marketers should expect in the coming months and years. We also invite you to request a demo to learn what's possible for your teams and how Canva can supercharge your creative output in less time. Today's webinar will be available on demand if you wish to review anything or share it with a team member. So thank you again to our speakers, and thank you all for watching.